When it comes to incorporating backstory, it's one of those tricky areas where you need to find the right balance. And today I have some advice for you, so stick around. What's up, guys? My name's Brandon McNulty. I'm a writer, I'm the author of Bad Parts, and welcome to my writing channel. Today we're going to talk about incorporating backstory. And this is something that inevitably you're going to have to do if you're writing a novel or if you're writing any story larger than maybe a few pages. And when we're talking about backstory, we're talking about something from a character's past that you bring into the present of the story. Now, there are a lot of ways to do this, but there are also a lot of bad ways to do this. And I think there are three tips that I really want to hammer on today as far as what you need to focus on when you are incorporating backstory. And those three tips, the first one, you need to make sure that when you're incorporating backstory that it's important, that it has some kind of purpose in the story. Maybe it gives us insight into character motivations, or it shines light on the plot, or it does something else important within the context of the story. If you're just throwing backstory in there just because you can't think of anything else to put down, you're doing it wrong. You need to make sure backstory, if you are bringing it into the present story, if you're doing that, it has to be important. Second tip, keep your backstory as concise as possible. Keep it brief because you don't want your backstory overriding your main story. And that's something that happens, I notice, in a lot of TV shows nowadays. You'll have a season start off with, the main plot being the central focus, and you'll have the story really chugging along toward the end of the season. And then because maybe the writers ran out of ideas, or they need to fill some kind of quota, like they needed 10 episodes when they only had material for 8, you'll hit one of those backstory episodes, and you know the ones. They start off with throwing us into the past, and we get to see the characters when they're younger or something like that. And instead of things moving along, we just spend the entire episode entrenched in the past. And maybe if we love the characters, we can forgive those episodes, but at the end of the day, they feel like filler because they don't move the actual story along. And when you are incorporating backstory into your own work, make sure that you just condense it down as much as you can, because you don't want to self-indulge. You don't want to give the audience the impression that you're just adding filler to the story, so keep it concise. And then the third tip is that your backstory should involve concrete details. Notice I say concrete. I don't say they have to be vivid or flashy or beautifully written or anything like that. Don't worry about that. But make sure we have concrete details that we can latch onto. Focus on the 5 senses, anything you can see or hear or taste or feel or smell. That's important, as well as, painting images of what characters went through in the past or what their situation was like way back when. Those are the kind of details that can get your audience into that backstory for that brief period of time you keep them there. Now, today I have an example that illustrates how to properly use backstory and to follow those 3 tips, where we're talking about important information that is concisely conveyed and it involves some concrete details. And this comes from a horror novel that I'm reading currently. It's called The Forgotten Island. It's by a UK author named David Sodergren, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm about halfway through, but the example I'm taking from is right from the opening chapter, the prologue actually, and this prologue is set up, it takes place on this island off the coast of Thailand, and there's these Thai workers from the mainland. They're working on this island, building this lavish resort. It's going to be this big tourist trap, but as they're doing construction work, they realize that they're building upon hollow ground, which is a major problem because you don't want the resort falling into the island. So I'm going to read a page from this prologue, and the focal character in this chapter, his name is Prakya, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, but the important thing to know is that he's the head guy on this project. He's overseeing it, and I'm just going to read this for you now so you can get a glimpse into why I think there's some great backstory in here. Several workers backed away from the pool. Prakya stared at them, his gaze rooting the men to the spot. He thought for a moment. Was the whole hillside hollow? They were building the resort over some kind of cave network, that was for sure, but it couldn't possibly be as big as it appeared. Downing tools would cost hundreds of men their jobs, his own included. He thought of his wife and child and their tiny 2-room apartment back in Bangkok, the roaches on the walls, and the way the building rattled whenever the train roared past, waking the neighborhood dogs, and then, inevitably, the baby. By that point, you could forget about getting any sleep. No, he didn't want to stop construction. So this is a great example of incorporating backstory, and it gives us some important information, and it's important that we learn about him as a character and his motivation, why he took the job, why he needs the money, and it's also great that we get to care about him. It's important to make us care about a character, even when it's just a one-off character in a prologue like Prakya. And when we care about characters, it helps us get invested in the story. So that's something you need to hit on. And then another thing that's great, it's very concise. It only takes up half a paragraph, and then we get right back to the story. And then finally, we get some concrete details, details that paint the image of what it's like to be a working class man living in Bangkok. We get an image of the roaches on the walls, the small two-room apartment, the way the building rattles whenever a train roars past, and how that triggers a series of events with dogs barking, and then finally his newborn baby wakes up, and we know he's not getting any sleep, and we can sympathize with him and his situation. We totally understand why he needs the money, why he wants this job to be successful. And this is what backstory should do. It should make us care about the characters and their situation, and it should help us understand the world better. It shouldn't just bog us down in all the little details of what happened in the past before the story started. That's the wrong way to write backstory. But connecting it to characters and building a connection between the characters, the story, the world, and the audience, that is what you want your backstory to do. So I hope this helps. Question of the day: what is one book, movie, or TV show that you feel indulges too much in backstory? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to check out my other videos. Hit the like and subscribe buttons for me. Share this video with a friend if you don't mind. Pick up a copy of Bad Parts if you haven't already. And as always, remember to keep on writing.